Hello and welcome to this episode of the 18% podcast. In 2018 there was a study which revealed that only 18% of people in the performing arts are working class. So this is the podcast where I, a working class comedian, interview 100% of people who are working class. By which I mean 100% of the guests are all working class. I don't mean that I interview every working class person ever. That would take a long time. But today's guest is a working class creative. It's the lovely Rebecca Winson. I'll just apologise quickly that this episode's going out a bit late. It's because, Christmas is a very busy time, and the last 3 years over Christmas I worked in a supermarket. So this year I just enjoyed having some time off, not working Christmas Eve, not working Boxing Day, just having a bit of a rest for a change. And if you work in a supermarket or retail, then all my love to you, because it's a horrible, horrible time to work in those jobs. It's, even if the customers are nice, it's still really stressful because you're so busy. So I hope you will cope all right, and I hope you're looking after yourselves, and you have a fantastic new year. Enjoy this episode of the podcast. For this podcast, are you Becky Winson or Rebecca?
Becky, I think. I don't really care what people call me, which has led to this confusion. You can call me either.
Should I alternate between them?
Yeah.
Okay, hello Becky.
Hello Tom.
What's it like being Rebecca?
What's it like being me? Is that a question? You want me to answer that?
Let's start with that, yeah. No, we don't have to.
I mean, like, that's a big question. It's okay being me.
That's good. That's a nice summary.
Yeah.
I've got this from your page on The Guardian.
Oh, right,
Posh,
okay.
exciting.
All one article.
It says, it's got like your profile and it describes you as a writer and a trade union activist for the GMB. What's GMB mean?
So GMB stands for General Municipal and Boilermakers Union, which I like that. It's quite cool. I don't know how they found that out. I should ask for my data to be looked after. But so I'm a member of GMB and became a workplace rep or shop steward for that union in my last job, and that's sort of how I got politically active. I had written before that, but being in a union and the stuff that exposed me to gave me a lot more to write about and made me a lot more aware probably of my own class. So that's probably quite a nice bio to have on The Guardian. Because if I was going to explain myself, I'd probably say, if someone made me pick between writer or trade unionist, it would be trade unionist every time.
Really?
Yeah.
But despite that, the Guardian tells me your writing has appeared in The New Statesman, The Feminist Times, For Book's Sake, I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
Oh yeah, it is cool.
On the Huffington Post, so clearly you're good at writing.
Well, I mean, there's lots of people whose works appeared in those places who are fairly shit at writing. So, like, I enjoy writing, and I think I'm okay at it.
I'm going to cut you down straight away because you've also written in this book that's called Know Your Place, essays on the working class by the working class, and I've read your piece in there, and I will say you are very good at writing.
Oh, thank you.
I think you just suffer from the humbleness that is perhaps attached to coming from a poor background where you don't want to sell yourself.
Possibly, although I think people from poor backgrounds are used to selling themselves constantly because they have to. So,
But not in an artistic medium, I think.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. And it's not something that is, well, I think it is something that was once part of working class culture in like a quite significant way, but definitely feels like it's not something you're allowed to be ambitious about if you're working class. It's like so I grew up on a council estate in the Lake District, and which is itself sort of like, people will immediately say like, oh well, that must have given you loads to write about because there's so many like great poets and writers who wrote about the Lake District or came from the Lake District, and like I think they're all crap. And B, like, it's one thing to be in the Lake District and go to St Anne's Grammar School or one of the posh schools up there and write poetry. It's another thing to be in the Lake District and like see poetry and writing like held up as this thing that like all these like dead old rich men did, and that, you know, is sold to like loads and loads of people, but it's never like given to you as something you can do. It like paints it as like, or it painted it for me as something like really that I sort of knew I wanted to do, but was quite inaccessible. Or I might write something in a scrapbook, but I would never think about getting it published. And I remember it's sort of like books and arts and stuff are stamped out of you quite an early age, I think. Or it's tried to be. And
do you think that's by your parents or by society, by school? Who do you think?
I mean, my mum and dad's were always like, you know, I think every room in the house had books in, like even the loo, and they always encouraged me to do what I wanted. Basically, it wasn't that they specifically said, "Oh, you should do writing," but they were never like, "Oh, there's no point in you doing that."
What sort of books did you have in the loo? Just out of pure curiosity.
Like, I mean, they sort of varied. So my dad might not be happy with this big broadcast, but there were his crossword books in there because he used to sit on the loo doing crosswords. But also, like, there'd be weird. This is still something that's in there to this day. Are like weird books of conspiracy theories, which are just like. I mean, essentially, I don't think anyone in my family believes any of them, but they're all quite good stories. The conspiracies around, like, how the moon landing was faked are actually, to me, like, if those were true, I'm way more interested in that. I can sort of imagine, oh, it's science, that's how you get to the moon, but, like, getting 50 people to all lie and keep lying for 60 years.
Oh, yeah, but that would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and, like, and then there's other things that are, like, make it a bit easier to be alive. Like some of those stories make it easier to come to terms with the fact that human beings are human beings, because they sort of put sense on things that don't really make any sense. Like, it's far nicer to think that JFK was killed because he was too good for this world and the FBI weren't having any of it than it is to think that like some bloke with a grudge and easy access to firearms was having a bit of a bad life and took it out on the President of the United States. So yeah, there were stories like that around, and maybe they've had more of an effect on me than I realise. But and then there'd be just stuff like, I remember Das Kapital being in there once, and then like novels and pamphlets and whatever my parents were reading, and I left in there when I had to have a bath.
It sounds like you had like a whole library in your toilet.
Well, it changed. It was like a rotating library.
Oh, this wasn't just at one point?
No, there's maybe like space for like 3 or 4 at one time.
And did you ever go into your dad's crossword books and write in an answer that was wrong to really annoy him next time?
He did that quite a lot. So I spent a long time thinking my dad was like... And my dad is very clever. But I thought, like, oh my God, my dad can do cryptic crosswords in like 10 minutes. Like, it's amazing. And then once, when I was like 15, I was sat next to him at breakfast in a chair I didn't usually sit in, and I was looking over his shoulder and I realised he was just filling it in with nonsense.
Oh no!
He'd answered some of it, but he was just like, there was one he was stuck on and he was just like, Slarty Bartfast or whatever.
I mean, still, it's technically completed. You've still done it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, when I challenged him, he was like, no one marks this.
It's not the right answer, but you've still finished it.
Yeah. So they didn't discourage me at all, and they were very encouraging and very sort of, didn't really push me, but were very, like, praised me when I did something good. But... like, I think a lot of council estates, like, everyone knows everyone. You don't really get a lot of privacy. And I remember there was this, like, one summer's, it must have been around July, August, summer's day. And I just got whatever the new Harry Potter book was. I was like 12 or 13 at the time, so maybe it was Prisoner of Azkaban. And I was like sat on this bench in my front garden reading it, and this kid, Robbie, went past on his bike and like threw like a pebble at me and was like, reading books in the holidays. And I was like, this is a child's book for children.
Yeah.
Like, am I not allowed to read this?
When else are you supposed to read a book?
I don't really know. And it didn't occur to me to be sort of, oh, you're just an idiot. I was like, oh, I shouldn't be reading books outside because like people will laugh.
Did that like genuinely put you off then?
Well, it didn't stop me reading them, but like there's stuff like that. Like I remember like someone taking the piss out of me in like year 9 because like I had to write down definitions for all these words in this game in English, and it was meant to be like a fairly difficult game, and I think for like a lot of the kids it probably was, but I was just like, oh, audible means that you can hear it or whatever. And they were just like this girl, who I will name and shame now. This girl was like, oh, you swallowed a dictionary. And I was like, well, fine then, I won't help you, but I will also I'll not be like that open about the fact that I like words and I like knowing what they mean and I like using them. So like, there's no one thing that makes a working class kid be like, oh, I can't be a writer. I think it's just like a slow, like, chipping away.
When I signed on when I was about 18, and at one point we had to, at the time, after you've been signed on for about 6 months, they send you to these weird things where you're supposed to train up your skills, whatever. Yeah. And they were just like really easy maths and English things. I was like, mate, if you've not seen my GCSEs, I don't need these.
Yeah.
But they just send everyone to them. But I remember even then, there was one point, the maths thing, it was really easy. Like, you're supposed to have 45 minutes to do it, and I finished it in about 8 minutes or something. And I was like, oh, I finished it. And even then, there was another person there in the room who was, some man who was probably like mid-40s or something. Even then, he was like, oh, look at you, you boffin. But even in adults like this, yeah. It's incredible.
But it's that thing, isn't it? It's like, in a way, I don't have any anger about the people who do it.
No, neither did I, because I was just like, well, I know people now who would raise their kids in a similar way. If they did badly at school, they're not going to put any sort of importance on being good at these things, and so their kids will grow up, and then their kids will be like, oh, why do you know that word? When it's just because since they were 3, their parents were like, it's fine, you don't need to know this stuff. Look at me, I don't.
I was talking to someone like a few months ago about why I'm an activist. And there was a group of us, and he said, why are you an activist? And I said, oh, because I'm quite angry about a lot of things. And he said...
That's a perfect answer.
And he said, why are you angry? And I said, oh, because I grew up working class. And he said, I don't think that's a good enough reason to be angry. And I said, well, I think a lot of working class people are angry. And he said, no, I don't think they are. And I thought, they fucking are, mate.
Yeah, was this person working class?
I don't know. He was American, so I think maybe there's a different view of class over there. But lots of working class people are like, even though they won't turn it into activism or probably better at dealing with it than I am, are quite angry because a lot of crap things happen to working class people, and I think most working class people are aware that that's unfair. If you spend your life thinking like that, and there's someone who in your group of mates or class or class at school or whatever who is like a bit sort of more educated because they've had chances at home or because they're just the IQ is a bit higher or the DNA is a bit like they're better at like maths than they are at sports or whatever, then I think there's always that thing where you don't want to feel crap about yourself and you don't want to keep thinking about how unfair it is that you didn't get a chance to like read books or draw or take part in sports. So you just take the piss out of whoever does it. Like I used to do it with kids at school who were really sporty. I'd be like, fucking meatheads. And actually like now I've got a bit older and I've got more money and I can afford to join a gym, I realise like the sports I did at school I just didn't like. And actually I really like running and I really like swimming, and if I'd had that opportunity then maybe maybe I'd be a world-class athlete. God damn it.
You could have been a world-class meathead.
Yeah.
How things could have been different.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know very many people who are working class who don't have that like imposter syndrome thing going on with what they want to do. They'll always think like, I'm not good enough to do it, or I might be good enough to do it, but things are structured in a certain way that I won't get to do it, so what's the point in trying to do it?
That's part of the difficult aspect, is that knowing that even if you want to do something and you can work as hard as someone else, but then they can just do better because their dad's got more money.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And that can be really disheartening, because you sort of feel like, I've worked as hard as them. Maybe even I'm better in lots of ways, but they just have more money and that puts them in front of the right people.
Yeah. Or it means that they've got more time to do it, or they can afford to like take a show to Edinburgh, and it's not like, that's not a whole year's income going into putting that on. Or they can, afford to pay like entry fees into short story competitions. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, you have to pay a fee to like enter some competitions.
I remember when I used to write poetry years ago, and if you want to enter one of these competitions, it'd be like £15 a time or something for one poem. Everything sells it to you. Oh, you need to do this to get exposure and get higher up and get known. But then not everyone can afford to spend £500 a year on entering different things.
Yeah. Or even if on paper you can, it's that thing about, it probably costs me about, how many lessons you need to pass a test now to drive? You need to do 20, right, I think? So what's that? That's like, it easily cost me at least £1,000 to learn how to drive. And that was so I could get a certain job. No one said to me, what the hell are you spending £1,000 learning to drive for?
Yeah.
I don't really need to learn to drive for anything other reason than that it makes it easier to apply for jobs as being an organiser or campaigner. So, no one said to me like, oh, that's a waste of money. But if I said, I'm going to spend £1,000 on going on writing courses and entering competitions to like get my work out there, and go to like, parties, launch parties where I might meet like agents or whatever, there's always that thing where it's just like, it's just writing though, isn't it?
One of the first things I read of yours was from the Know Your Place book, an essay that started with you talking about finishing uni in, I think, 2009, and the dread you felt entering this world that was recession hit, and you knew you'd probably have to sign on.
Yeah.
I had to sign on for about 3 years, I think. It's not fun, is it?
No, it's horrible. I think I was on the dole for pretty much a solid year, maybe about 18 months. And I got like, what's the word?
Sanctioned?
I didn't get I did get sanctioned because they said that I'd not attended an appointment that I'd attended, and they'd lost. Basically, they take a register when you go in there, right? And they must have basically lost that sheet of paper and had a target to hit. So they were like, oh, you just didn't turn up. I was doing 3 hours a week at the National Gallery as like one of the people that stands in the room making sure that people don't burn down the paintings, basically. And I got paid about 30 quid for that, and that was taken off my benefits, so I was basically working for free.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, it's so awful as well, because like because I was like on bank staff, they'd be like, we can offer you a full, I think it was like a 10-hour shift. But if I'd done that and taken that, I'd have had all my benefits stopped for 6 weeks. So even though that would have probably been like a pathway into a full-time job there, like I couldn't do it but they took my benefits off me anyway, because they said I'd not been to an appointment, and because they said that I hadn't given them my wage slips from the National Gallery on a weekly basis, which was never possible because
you don't get paid weekly.
You get paid weekly, you get paid monthly, and they couldn't give me a pay slip on a weekly basis. And I was declaring like all my income because I was so terrified of HMRC, and I was sanctioned for like, I think 6 to 8 weeks, sold a guitar, sold loads of my clothes, and was still like knee deep in my overdraft. And it took me 2 years to get out of that overdraft, basically.
Really?
Like, I was always in debt to the tune of benefits that I'd lost. Because like something like that just sets you back so much. So it's pretty horrible, yeah.
And I believe nowadays, if you want to claim universal credit, you have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get it anyway.
Yeah.
Which, considering how much that impacted you, I think that's pretty disgusting. That's the expectation now, that people should wait.
It's fucking... there's no words for it. And I saw some tweet from one of the Tory MPs in Plymouth. I've forgotten his name now. Johnny Mercer. He sounds like an East End gangster. So like, there's a bit of me who's like, Johnny Mercer, like bit of a Jack the Lad. Like, he's like, you know, I sort of feel like just the name is like, he's someone you'd write into a novel as a bit of a cheeky chappy, but he's actually a shit. And
what a disappointment that is. You hear his name, you get all excited.
Yeah, because it sounds a bit like a Labour name in a way. Like, anyway, maybe it's just me that assigns political values to people's names. But he was tweeting like, oh, you know, the universal credit row has been manufactured because people have got political interests in it. And I think, of course, people have got fucking political interests in it. You fucking idiot. Like, you've got a political interest in it. You're in the Tory party and you put this together. And, like, the pretense that there's a way of looking at this that is anything other than... Like, the very kindest you can be about it is that the government is saving money that rich people lost us at the expense of poor people. Like, that's the very kindest you can be about it. There's like, even, that's their own narrative, is them saying, like, the way to get us back into the black is to cut taxes for the rich and cut benefits for the poor. That's the very kindest you can be about it. And, like, at the very worst, like, they're killing people. Like, there are people who die waiting for disability benefits and people who die waiting for job seekers, and it's in a really horrible sort of like what's the word, like general view of things way, looking at like the long game, it could prove to be something like the poll tax, which basically it just becomes so unpopular and is so demonstratively unfair that it loses them voters. And Tories always go too far. They always like get nastier and nastier and nastier, and then everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they did this last time. They're nasty. We should start voting for them."
I couldn't believe in the most recent general election where one of their policies was genuinely to bring back fox hunting.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck are you on about? What? Yeah. Who's walking around? I've never met anyone going, yeah, you should bring that back. But they were just like, yeah, but we want to kill foxes.
Yeah, like, how do you defend it, really? Like, I mean, there were a lot of people in the Lake District who were quite angry when it got banned. But, I mean, the other stupid thing is, like, and I say this as someone who cares very deeply about foxes, they're one of my favourite animals, but you can still just kill him. Like, the police don't prosecute fox hunts because they're so overworked because of Tory budget cuts. So maybe just shut up about it, carry on hunting them, and don't assume that everyone else is going to vote for your, like, horrible hobby to be made illegal. Because all that did was, like, draw more attention to the fact that this still went on. And, like, I assume that, like, the hunt saboteur movement probably got a few extra members out of it. So, yeah.
You are advising Tories to break the law.
Well, they do it anyway.
Yeah, but you're encouraging them to do it even more.
Well, then, yeah, I think they should. I think they should all break the law, go in prison, and they'd see what it's like to be in a judicial system that's run by their government.
I think we should arm foxes.
Well, like, strap a little, like, minigun to their backs.
Yeah.
And just have it poised. Like, if they ever see, like, a face that looks like a horse but isn't a horse, that's a Tory. And the minigun will just, like, have a facial recognition system.
Make it a fairer fight.
Yeah, it would be a fairer fight, wouldn't it? Like, you probably wouldn't chase a fox if it had a minigun strapped to its back.
I'd watch that on telly.
I don't know.
Tories versus foxes.
Tories v foxes. Someone
or
should make...
they don't have the horses and dogs, and it's just the Tory people
On foot.
Like Boris Johnson just running, trying to catch up with a fox, and the fox attacks him.
Yeah.
I'd watch that. That'd be good.
Yeah, I'd watch that as well. I'd watch the hell out of that. Someone should make an app, a game based on that. I'd play that to death.
Maybe this is the start of it. Maybe
This has got quite violent quite quickly, hasn't it? It's escalated from like just political chit chat to
because
like
everyone's angry.
let's get Tories ripped apart by foxes. That will solve inequality in the arts system.
Well, maybe. I mean, we've not tried it, so we don't know yet.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's their argument for universal credit. So
Pretty much.
yeah, pretty much. They're a horrible party, and I'm very glad that their membership's like disgustingly low now, isn't it? Like.
But the sad thing is their membership, it only takes a few people to give $1 million each or whatever.
Yeah. But they can't match like people power. So they're like,
No, that's true.
yeah. Although they do pay people to hand out leaflets for them. Which,
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, they have to, otherwise people won't.
Well, exactly.
Tories will not work for free.
Tories, we're that popular that people have to be paid to support us.
I was looking through your Twitter before this podcast.
All right.
And it's an amazing Twitter feed. I think people should check it out. A lot of it is just political anger.
Yeah, it's quite an angry. I occasionally try and make it a bit less angry. And there is I think my Twitter bio mentioned something about Coronation Street, and for a while I was like, I can just tweet about Coronation Street occasional evenings, and that'll be a nice break for everyone on my followers list. And then I realised that I was just tweeting really angry stuff about Coronation Street as well.
Like what? Like, Ken, he's such a Tory, stuff like that? Or
No, Ken's not a Tory.
I don't know. I don't
Wash
want
your
to.
mouth out. Ken is
I'm so
a
sorry.
lifelong socialist.
I apologise, Ken, you fictional character.
I mean, in real life, the guy who plays him, William Roach, is like a card-carrying Tory, but he plays a socialist.
Oh, that makes me sick.
A really good socialist, and he's got a really good-looking son who's just joined the cast, like the character has. He's not William Roach's actual son, and he's also like a socialist who also quotes like Allen Ginsberg and literature. So I really like that character a lot. But yeah, no. What was I tweeting that was angry about Coronation Street? I think it was just like inaccuracies, like stupid things. Like Roy's Rolls, right, is a cafe on Coronation Street, and Roy's menu is behind him in the counter, and it's like takes up his entire wall. It's that big, and he's got a tiny kitchen. So A, how does he cook it? Where is he cooking it? It's not realistic. And B, you can get a full-on chicken curry in Roy's Rolls for $2.50. And I know it's set in Manchester, but the North's not that cheap, and Manchester's definitely not that cheap anymore. So again, unrealistic.
I mean, you've not been to Roy's Rolls, clearly.
Well, yeah, he's a nice man, so maybe he's just selling it all at cost. But
or maybe it's not actual chicken, it's just dodgy stuff in there.
No, Roy wouldn't do that. I think if you're going to start slagging these people off, Tom,
I don't want to do slander. I don't want to get sued by Roy's Rolls. That'd be awful.
No, I think it's just a basic mark of respect. It's you have to watch these people, this story, before you can comment on it. You're two of my favourite men in the entire world are Ken Barlow and Roy Cropper. You've just.
No, that's going to be the tagline for this podcast.
Two of my favourite. They are. I mean, mankind's got a very low set of standards, so I have to get inspiration from somewhere, or hope in men, and it's from Ken Barlow and Roy Cropper.
I'd love you to write an essay about them, please.
I would I was actually going to write for what's it called? The F word. On feminism in soaps, and I wrote it was a 3-part article, so I think I wrote 3,000 words, and I sent it to them, and they came back and were just yeah, it's cool, just need to make like a few changes. But because I was so like fiercely protective of Coronation Street, I was like, I'm not explaining the show. Like all they wanted me to do was like explain the context of stuff a bit, so like it made clear who like Eileen was and why her catfighting with Gail was important. And I was like, no, if people don't know this, I don't want them to know this. I've watched this show for 25 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's great. Like, Coronation Street is like a prime example of why it's important for working class people to have access to the arts and like be able to make them, because it was written and created by a guy called Tony Warren, who based it on the lives of the people that he'd grown up with in a city like the, you know, 2 Up 2 Downs in Manchester, and basically like, you know, loads of its cast now are like from a working class background, and it's really looked down upon like soaps as a genre, but actually Coronation Street is amazing, and it's some of its actors are amazing. Like Saran Jones was in Coronation Street, Sarah Lancashire was in Coronation Street, Ian McKellen was in Coronation Street.
No.
Like, yeah, and he wanted, like, he basically was like, I want to do a guest role in it. Like, they really good actors like want to be in Coronation Street. Maureen Lipman's in it at the moment. She's brilliant.
I'm gonna have to watch it now, aren't I?
Yes, I mean, it will take you about a year until you're sort of like fully into it, but like one shot into it.
We'll do another podcast in a year, which is just us talking about Coronation Street for a whole hour.
Yeah. I wonder if there is a podcast on Coronation Street.
There must be.
I don't know. I mean,
it's so huge.
Yeah, but like, I don't think many people discuss it in depth. So there's a space.
So you're going to start it, are you?
For political literary analysis of Coronation Street, yeah.
I don't think that's a podcast.
I think it is a podcast. I mean, that's not what I'd call it, but that's what it would be. And I would like trick people, I'd radicalise people through it. Yeah. Coronation Street is basically actually probably what made me, it's still like, things like Coronation Street are still what make me think like, oh, writing about working class life is like important and possible because it's there like on our screens all the time, and they're not shy to be like really melodramatic and overblown like all soaps are, but they're also like, you know, they take it seriously and like they're proud of what they do, and they should be. So things like that are really important. I don't think that you would get Coronation Street now. I think if Tony Warren was still alive and like a young bloke like pitching something to TV now, I don't think that like an ordinary drama about working class life would be accepted. I think they'd probably say like, oh yeah, but you know, you make it a bit like Benefit Street or something like that, and it would end up like that, or it wouldn't get commissioned at all. There's a certain amount of like, this is going to come out sounding really, really wanky. There's a certain amount of neoliberalism that pervades like all of the arts, and it's sort of a problem because it both devalues the arts. So it says that like, you know, humanities degrees, what's the point in them? Music GCSEs, what's the point in that? But it also means that like, you can't just do arts for the sake of doing arts. At the moment, I'm not writing anything much because I don't really know where I'd pitch it, because I've not written for like properly for like a year or so, and you know, editors move around and you lose their email addresses and they forget who you are, and it becomes difficult to pitch. That shouldn't stop me writing. Like, I enjoy writing and I should still be doing it, and even if I was just putting it on my own blog, that's still okay. But because our society sort of sees success as monetary and fame-based rather than... Bob Dylan said a really good thing, which was that when someone asked him if he thinks he's successful, he said, a man is successful if he gets up in the morning and goes to bed at night and in between does what he wants to do. And like, that's a pretty good definition of success. And it's probably very easy for millionaire Bob Dylan to say that. and not bring money into it, but money shouldn't come into it with the arts, and so I think there should be more arts funding, and it's a disgrace that it's been so heavily cut, and it's a bit worrying that I don't really hear Labour talking about how they're going to change that. Also, I think it, like, if there's any working class kid listening to this thinking like, oh, this is like crap, like what am I going to, like, I can't do any of this, like funding's been cut and my school doesn't even have keyboards, like how am I ever going to learn to play music, or how am I ever going to learn to write scripts? Like, just do it. Like, it's fine if you don't get rich off it, if you don't get famous off it. If you're still enjoying it, then keep doing it and keep making the time to do it, because that's one of the worst fucking thing about capitalism, is it, like, it just takes pleasure off you, and it makes pleasure like monetized. Like, if you're not getting money off it, or if it's costing you too much money, you don't prioritize it. And like all the things that I've done that I'm proudest of, I think actually probably with the exception of that Know Your Place essay, I've not got paid that much for them. I've not got paid anything for it. I think people should remember that Bob Dylan quote, and that's what artists should work to, I think.
So with that quote in mind, why do you think you've not written anything for a while?
Well, I mean, I've got a different job than I used to sort of like knock out an article in like a lunch break. At the time, I thought like, oh, anyone could do this. But actually, like, if you don't get a lunch break, or you're in a job where it's really stressful, you've not got that time or headspace to do it. So that's a part of it. I've got a job that I, on paper, don't work long hours, but actually, I probably work 50% more than I used to at a day job that takes up a lot of my headspace. And then I think the other thing is actually writing that essay for Know Your Place. It's one of the most personal things I've ever written, and it wasn't difficult to write, but I did write it very personally, deliberately, and I think it is, I mean, I don't read it, I've not read it really since it was published, until a few weeks ago, and I think it's probably one of the best things I've written because it's so personal. And so I know that if I want to keep writing, I sort of like have that itch that it should be a bit personal, and I don't know if I want to do that, or I definitely find it difficult to do, because you're sort of also, you're not writing just about yourself, you're writing about other people, and it's quite difficult to sort of write in depth about other people and feel totally comfortable doing it. And yeah, I mean, there's the other thing, which is that like there's no point in me writing it unless it's going to get read. And like I said, like I don't know where to pitch this stuff to anymore at the moment. And I could put it on my blog, but I don't think many people read that. So that's what I was talking about before. You get into this sort of bind where it's like it becomes to serve a purpose rather than to serve yourself. And also for a long time I was using my writing to almost like as a campaign tool, like so I'd write about things that mattered to me politically, and I sort of can like scratch that itch with my job to a certain extent now. So maybe that anger is worked out in other ways.
Well, that could be healthy. Maybe it's healthier to get it out through your job than writing. I don't really know.
I think it's more exhausting to do.
Oh, well, get writing again then.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why I don't do it. I don't know if I'll go back to doing it a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a writer at the moment. You have to write to be a writer.
But you have written and you've been published, so I think that means you're always a writer. If that's what you've done and that's what you've been paid for, and that's what you enjoy doing and that's what you're good at. Yeah,
I guess. There is still like a bit of me who's like the 12-year-old who had a pebble thrown at her, which is that it's a bit of a wanky thing to be, like a writer, like, and I know that's a stupid opinion to have, but there's a bit of me who doesn't want to put too much effort into being a writer, because not just because it's like a load of effort and time, but because it wasn't ever anything that I thought that I could do when I was a kid, and it was something that people who I grew up alongside took the piss of. one of my best mates when I was a kid was a girl who was like an amazing artist. She still is, and she's got an amazing career out of it. And she was just like, she could just draw like anything. Like, you know, a stick figure would have like more feeling in it than anything I could do in like 2 hours. She was like really badly bullied at school for being a bit different and being creative. And like that sort of stuff like leaves a mark on you. You've grown up in an environment where people are basically like reading stupid, writing stupid, drawing stupid, prancing around on stage. None of you can ever amount to anything doing this, so why are you doing it? It just leaves that little voice at the back of your mind being like, if it's difficult to write and it's stupid, why are you doing it? Tom looks mystified.
Well,
like maybe I've destroyed your ambitions now.
This will be the last ever podcast. It's just the end of my career.
It's difficult and it's stupid. I'm not doing it anymore.
I get that, because it is sort of, I feel for me there is often a feeling where sometimes I would get depressed if I don't make much money from comedy, but then there's also part of me that's like, yeah, but there's other people who don't get much money from doing a normal job.
Yeah.
I've done normal jobs and I probably will still be doing normal jobs for years, I imagine. I don't think comedy's going to suddenly make me a millionaire overnight. There is part of me that's always like, yeah, but nurses don't make money, policemen don't make enough money, firemen don't make enough money, you know, who am I to complain that I don't make money from telling silly jokes when there's people who are saving lives who still go home and have to check their bank balance and feel shit.
It's a nice problem to have, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have nothing more to add. That's a very good way of thinking about it, basically. And I will try and think like that. I'm going to write that on a quote on a piece of paper and stick it over my desk.
You were recently on a panel at the World Transformed Festival, which is like a politics, art and music festival, and you were speaking about the link between being working class and having mental health issues.
Yeah.
And it was fucking amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It made me do a bit of a cry.
A few people have said that. I don't think I said anything that was that upsetting.
I just think it was relatable.
Okay.
And it stood up for people in a way that you don't hear enough. There's lots of things, like especially on World Mental Health Day, which I think the event was kind of partly shaped around that. And there were so many people talking about mental health that I can name you like 200 people I saw do posts about it. But then the number of people who actually made the link to poverty, I can probably count on one hand.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's such an obvious link that it's just not made anywhere near enough.
When I was writing that essay in Know Your Place, I went through like medical journal records or whatever, articles, and followed up on citations and things. And there's so much evidence to show that if you're poor, you're more likely to be mentally ill or have a mental health problem or whatever we want to call it. And I don't understand why people don't talk about it, but I think it's probably because it means that it makes it a more difficult thing to fix.
I think it's easy for people in charge, especially those in like a Tory government, if they place mental health issues and poverty as separate issues, it's easier for them to talk about it without actually doing anything.
Yeah.
Because if they face the truth that they can often be intrinsically linked,
yeah,
they'd be held more accountable for.
Yeah, but it's odd because they also talk about it in a way which recognises it stops people working. So, do you know what the IAPT services are?
No.
I don't know what... So it's IAPT. I've forgotten what the acronym is, but basically it's talking therapies. And IAPT, like... There's meant to be like IAPTs that cover the entire country and everyone should be able to get them. And talking therapies can mean everything from like ringing the Samaritans, but like in a more formal way, like telephone support, to CBT, to like psychotherapy, to counselling, to whatever. And it's basically just been boiled down to mean CBT that's aimed at getting you back into work. Like I was talking to a psychotherapist a few months ago about it as part of when I was at work, and he was basically saying, like, it doesn't just mean that the care that you're giving to the patient is not as good as it should be, because what is the point in him giving CBT to a person who needs like psychotherapy around the fact her husband was beating her up for years, or whatever the problem is. But it puts like an immense amount of strain on them as like workers as well, like because they're under pressure to just basically get people off the list and back out into functioning in quotation marks society. But yeah, so I think maybe when I was writing what I said at The World Transformed, it seems very obvious to me as a link, because there are very few people I know who suffer from mental health problems. There are some, but there aren't very many whose ill health isn't in some way linked to the fact that capitalism exists, basically. But yeah, maybe it doesn't get talked about as much as it should in those terms.
I think what was brilliant about what you wrote for the World Transformed was that it was, you say it might seem obvious, but it was very, very well articulated, and it was very intelligently put, and it was emotive, and it was just very powerful. And I think that's what sort of would struck a chord with a lot of people, because it's easy for someone to go, "Oh, I've got no money, it's really bad for my mental health. Oh, it's fucking awful." But you didn't do that. It was sort of articulated in a much more, this is bollocks, and
yeah.
Can we stop it being this much bollocks, please?
Yeah.
Again, it was much better than that. If you go, we might see if we can somehow link to it or tag it on the end of this podcast or something, because it was much better than just saying bollocks twice, which I said. I'm
sure that The World Transformed will give you a clip of it if you want, because it's on SoundCloud. I don't know, like I felt weird giving that speech, because I think I said at the beginning of it, like I've been there, but I'm definitely not in that place now. And I think that certainly like my housing situation massively affects my mental health. But I've got a permanent job. I'm on an above average salary. Like that doesn't so much that sort of things doesn't bother me anymore. But
I think if it was still impacting you, you wouldn't be able to speak about it in that way.
Yeah, and I'm very like, maybe it's what stops me writing actually, is that like it does feel like a bit of a responsibility to sort of talk about this stuff properly, because most of the people, like you said, who were going through it, you can't talk about it at the time. And if someone had asked me to do that speech even 6 months ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I think, it's worth saying, like, that whole panel, if people can find it on SoundCloud, that whole discussion is worth listening to. And there were some really good contributions from the floor as well, especially around how race and gender intersect with all of this as well. And I think they're definitely worth listening to. And if I'd had some more time on the panel, I'd have liked to talk about those as well, because probably like a big reason I initially got depression when I was 18 wasn't just because I was working class, it was because I was working class and a woman, because I was in a pretty shit relationship. And I don't know if there's sometimes part of me that thinks that like mental health and being working class, like I do wonder, like in a really sort of like masochistic's like the wrong word for it, but like I would quite like to experience like upper class depression, just to see if it's like similar to working class depression, because sometimes I wonder if they're the same thing and they feel the same, because I mean you can just get depressed because you've got a serotonin imbalance, but like I think my serotonin imbalance is because I've got a lot of crap to deal with and I've had to in my life, whereas I know it does happen to rich people, and I'd never wish it on anyone, but I want to know what it's like. I think if you got rid of capitalism, you'd probably get rid of a lot of mental health conditions.
I imagine even rich people, obviously I can't speak for them, but I imagine there might be some who maybe they're like a rich footballer and they've reached a really high standard of the game, they're in the Premiership or whatever, and they're earning good money, and then maybe part of the depression is that it's not what they thought it was, and they're like, oh, is this it? Or it almost makes me feel sick saying it, but like the same way that poor people can be trapped by poverty,
yeah,
there's probably some rich people who feel trapped by that as well.
Yeah,
who kind of feel like, oh, I can't meet normal people, I can't do this, which, I mean, just give me your money, if that's you, please. but I imagine there are some people who somehow perversely have that, who, like, I imagine there's days people in the royal family go, oh, I'm sick of this, I'd rather just...
Yeah, like... I mean,
even though they've got no real concept of what it's like not to be that.
Yeah, like, if you're a famous woman, that's so much shit to deal with. Even if you're very wealthy, you know, it probably doesn't make the rape threats more bearable.
The daily threats, yeah. Every day.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the concept of money's got a lot to answer for, hasn't it? The World Transformed was interesting because when they basically asked me to... I got massive imposter syndrome doing it because, you know, they said, like, oh, yeah, we like your writing and everything, but, like, really, the only reason they know about me is because my mate George, you know, he's one of the organisers, and they were looking for a speaker, and George was like, oh, Becky should probably do this, and I don't think it was as easy as them just being like, yeah, okay then.
Yeah, but they would have booked you off the back of your writing, and he would have suggested you. Yeah. But if he went, here's your writing, and your writing was, oh, give me a penny, please. Thanks,
my
Becky.
Novel, my
they wouldn't
list of who's wronged me.
Yeah, exactly. If you know, they would have still booked you off the back of your talent.
Well, yeah, but you know, imposter syndrome's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pointless me having it, but yeah, they you know, they read that, I assume, and read a blog I wrote. And when I wrote the Know Your Place thing, and I remember when I pitched it to them, I felt a bit like no one really talks about mental health and being working class, and like I can see the link because I've seen it, how it affected my little brother, and I've seen how it affected me, and I've seen how it affected my parents. But maybe that's just us, and we're just a dysfunctional family, and there's not actually a link, there's nothing to talk about. And I feel like in the past year or so, maybe because of the resurgence of the left and like people talking about class and capitalism more, the links are starting to be drawn. And I think the medical professions are becoming a lot more aware of it as well. Maybe because of the impact. I mean, sadly, it might just be because more people are getting sicker because of austerity, and so it's become a lot more obvious than it was 18 months ago. It doesn't get talked about enough, class mental health link, but I think it is becoming more talked about, and it gives me a lot of hope because I think it will eventually lead to a change in how this stuff's treated.
Well, I definitely think part of the reason it's not talked about, I think there's the idea that working class men in particular, they're kind of sort of told that no, you just got to be a man, suck it up, get on with it. You're a man, you know, you just get on with it. That's what my dad did, that's what his dad did, blah, blah, blah. You know, you're told all that sort of stuff. And so they sort of feel like, yeah, I can't actually go to the doctors about this because I've been told I have to just put up with it and be strong and not be weak. And also there's the fact that medication costs money.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's been times in my life where I've not got my antidepressants because I couldn't afford them. And it's literally, that's the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You need them to keep yourself mentally well, but you're like, I can't afford that £8 this week. And I think that does put some people off because they think, yeah, the doctor might be able to help me, but I can't afford any more expenses. I've not got that money.
Yeah, and also because it's not acknowledged that, like, I don't know, being on a 0 hours contract, like, you know, if you go and work go work night shifts, it's sort of like, most people know that fucks your body clock up. Body clock.
Fucks your body clock up a bit.
It fucks up your body clock.
Yeah.
Most people know that, and most employers know that, and there's laws around, like, you know, how many days in a row you can do on a night shift and all that sort of stuff, because it is a proven link between, like, your working conditions and your health. But not many people know that if you're on 0 hours contracts or on low pay or working 2 jobs at once, that's more likely to make you get anxious or depressed. So there's this sort of, like, people don't self-diagnose. People will think, well, of course I'm sad. I'm in a shit situation. It's not depression because there's a cause for it, and loads of other people are in the same boat. So I'm not going to go to the doctors about it because I'm not ill. I'm just poor.
Yeah, that's true. You sort of feel like even if you get medication for it, you're still in that situation.
Yeah, and it's totally true.
Yeah, and it does, I guess the thing people don't realise is that it can help that situation. But
yeah, like you said, medication or counselling or whatever is not going to make it go away, but it can, and it does help you deal with that situation better in a lot of cases. I mean, we're talking a lot about depression and anxiety here, which like medication can control fairly easily, but then there's also things like bipolar disorder and like schizophrenia and like people who have psychotic episodes. And I think there's a class divide there too with that, because that's sort of seen as like if someone who's got a lot of money develops those things, it's very easy, it's a lot easier for them to get treatment for it because they can afford it, and it's special, like that's real specialised treatment that they've got to have, and like the facilities that they go to are probably going to be well staffed and nice and where they should be. But if you end up getting sectioned on the NHS at the moment, at the moment, anecdotally, I know this from someone in Basingstoke, which is where we are at the moment. If you are suicidal in Basingstoke for any reason, doesn't matter like how uncontrollable that reason is, or like how serious it is, or like if it's depression or bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever, there aren't any beds, so they can't section you because there's nowhere to send you.
So what do? They
put you in a hospital bed and they send you home. And so, or they end up in a situation like my little brother ended up in years and years ago, which was that there was no crisis team staff available to help him. He tried to commit suicide, failed, so wasn't physically injured. So A&E, wasn't the place to go for him. And the crisis team were basically like, he needs to be restrained or he's going to try again. We can't get to him. There's sort of like the nearest place that he can go to is in Lancaster, which is another county. So like he's going to need to be somewhere overnight. Like you've got to ring the police. And he ended up in a police cell, and because you have to do this when you're in a police cell, he had his fingerprints taken, he had his DNA swabbed, he had all his clothes taken off him, he was locked up. So that's what people who were working class experience when they're mentally ill.
Yeah, there's no chance in hell that that's going to help their mental health.
No, and it's actually, it's... Alex is really free when he talks about it now. He let me write about it in that book. He let me mention it at The World Transformed. But, that's a pretty scarring thing to happen to someone. And then the ward he ended up in, all sorts of horror stories that he came back with from that. But, it affected my mental health as well, because,
Of course it would.
The last time I went to the doctors about any of this, I'm not on medication because I made the decision I didn't really want to be, because I've never reacted well to it physically. But I really wanted counselling, and the doctor basically said to me, "Are you suicidal?" And I thought, I'm not. But if I told you I was, I'd probably get better treatment. But I'm not going to lie to you, because I don't want to end up in a place where I can't control what's going on, and I don't know what's going to happen to me if I tell you that I'm suicidal. I don't know, So I don't blame some working class people for not accessing healthcare, because why would you have to be able to trust authority to do that. But yeah, the suicidal thing. There's also that. They never ask you, they say, are you self-harming? And you say, well, no. But, what's your definition of that? You can end up killing yourself accidentally because you're, off your head on drink, because that's what you're self-medicating with, and you sort of, fall in the wrong place in the road and get run over, or, something horrible happens to you. And the NHS is terrible. Even if it had loads of funding at the moment, I don't think the NHS would be able to treat mental health properly, because the systems just aren't there.
For years, I'd be like, oh no, I've not self-harmed, because I thought, I've not done what I've seen self-harm
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
I've not cut my arm. I've not got scars all over my arms or my legs or anything. But it's like when I was like 15 or something, I would like smack myself in the face until I was crying because I hated myself. And then like there's also times where I would have gone out and drunk just 10 bottles of cider on my own because I didn't want to think anymore and I didn't want to be alive. And then but in my head I was like, oh, I've not self-harmed because I've not done what has been shown to me as self-harming.
Yeah.
But it's like, mate, how the fuck was what you were doing not self-harming? You were literally smacking yourself in the face. But I was like, yeah, but it's not what I've seen on the telly, so it can't be proper self-harm.
Yeah, and it's not what the doctor asks you about. No one, I've never had a mental health nurse or a GP be like, if you punch yourself in the face. So... Yeah, the drinking thing. This is the first time I've talked about this, and it's on a podcast. But for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages, I was like, why do I sometimes have months or periods of the year where I'm drunk loads? I don't really want to. I don't really like drinking that much. What's that line in Peep Show? Oh, wine's nice, but it's not Coca-Cola. It's not hot chocolate. I don't really like the taste of it. So why do I do it? And it took me ages to sort of think that, I don't do it because it's a quick fix medicine, but also because I, when I'm at my very lowest, don't really care about my kidneys or my liver. And I don't care if I sort of get so drunk that I, smack my head open or whatever. So, but I wonder if maybe a reason that doctors don't ask that is because they sort of, I don't know. No, I don't think it is. I was going to say maybe working class people deal with this sort of stuff differently, or a different cultured way to middle class people, and maybe the image that a lot of us have got of a mental health condition is quite a middle class one.
I think so. There's definitely part of my head that whenever I hear about therapists and counselling, I think that's quite middle class.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's definitely been periods of my life, probably even now, where I don't want to go to that because I'm like, oh no, that's the middle class people. That's either really expensive and I can't afford it, or that's... I kind of think if I saw a therapist, they'd sit me down and go, oh, so what's your problem? I'd go, oh, I'm fucking poor. And they'd go, what else? And I'd be like, no, that's it. Can I have $5,000? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, what, you can't help me then? It's sort of that mentality where it's like, you can't actually fix this situation or problem for me. You can swim around my mind and tell me different aspects of it, but you can't solve the fact some people are working for £8 an hour. You can't.
Yeah, and I'm in therapy at the moment, and it's really good, but there's a bit of a wall that I get to where my therapist, who's really lovely, is like, do you think the world's a fundamentally unfair place? She asked me what I feel are fairly obvious questions, and it's yeah, the world's fucking shit. The world's really awful. We're probably all going to drown in 30 years because no one's doing anything about global warming because loads of people are making money off it at the moment. Some people aren't even paid minimum wage. No, the world's terrible, and she'll go she'll sort of nod, and she doesn't disagree with me. But it's sort of if that's what's depressing you. I mean, I sort of, one thing I've realised recently is activism isn't just because I'm angry. It's it is a form of if I didn't do this, I would drink or be really hedonistic or do something that meant that I didn't have to think about it all. Because, I mean, the other thing is you would just throw yourself into a job that was well paid and you didn't have to think about it because you weren't affected by it. So yeah, it's activism is dealing with bad crap that's happened to me and my family, and writing is like that as well, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, maybe one day there will be a mental health care system that says oh, you're poor. Well, your prescription is more money, and here's some money.
I think that's what it does kind of hurt, because you know in your head there are people who could make that happen. You know in your head there's people in charge there's people in charge who have that money themselves personally, who could be like, oh, you're mentally unwell because you're struggling financially, here's $2,000.
Yeah.
And there's points of my life where I'd be like suffering from insomnia, like not sleeping at night, where I would be thinking like, just $2,000 and I'd be able to sleep right now. I'd be alright. That would really help me out right now.
Yeah.
And you know there's people who could do that. You know there's people with stupid amounts of money.
It makes me I remember once going round, what's that big posh shop in London?
Nando's.
That big posh shop.
Genuinely, for me, that's posh food. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's roast chicken. Roast chicken is posh food.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, that it is. Like, if I look at a roast chicken, I'm like, oh, posh, roast dinner.
I'm like, £12, I'm already splashing out today.
Yeah, half my weekly food bill on one meal. This is amazing, so decadent. I was in Harrods with some of my mates.
And you were trying to buy chicken and you were furious.
And I just couldn't buy the chicken. They were shopping for Christmas decorations for someone else, and like, you know, Harrods is like a nice place to go and like get a few gifts from, and that's all we were doing in there. But it was like they had a whole floor, as I remember it, like dedicated to baubles, and like these baubles went from like a fiver, and like it's a fairly nice thing, just like buy a bauble for someone for Christmas, like it's a bit of whimsy, there's no harm in that, to like people buying whole like trees worth of decorations that totaled probably like half of my salary, like massive like crackers that had actual like toys in them, like stuff that I just you don't know this stuff exists until you see it.
I hate
and then
crackers.
Like, what have you got against crackers?
I hate them
like
so
first
much.
Ken Barlow, then Roy Cropper, and now like what the hell is wrong with crackers?
For me, they're like the ultimate. They're just such a middle class way of just pissing money down the drain. They're like, we've spent £10 on this thing that no one even likes. You don't like the hat. You chuck the toy away. You've just wasted money on this.
I love the hats. Like every year.
Have you still got them in your cupboard? Do you still wear them regularly?
No, but I have like Christmas selfies, and for the whole month of December, my Facebook profile picture is me in a whimsical cracker hat.
Well,
and
you're keeping an evil
empire
tradition
what
running.
What about all those poor joke writers? Like, who have to... They're in the arts. They're writing them
they're
jokes.
the same jokes every year.
Well,
it's one bloke who's still making money from the 50s of his old material.
Peter Kay's been doing that for a long time. I love Peter Kay. What was I on about? Yeah, like people, like whole crackers, like the size of this table, like just filled with like actual, not just like little plastic frogs that you can like flick into your dad's mashed potatoes over the table, but like, you know, like
real frogs,
real tree frogs imported from Brazil
that you can chuck into your dad's dinner
in a real flour that your dad can like place on top of the poor child that he's feasting upon. There's a nice little garnish. That's what was in those crackers. And I just remember, like...
See, those crackers sound good. I'd like those ones. With real frogs in.
Yeah, everyone would like that. I think, because crackers are amazing, whether or not they're like that or like... It's always exciting. I think you should maybe get some different crackers. They don't all have to cost £10. Anyway, I had been out in London feeling very festive and full of goodwill to all men, etc. And then we went in Harrods, and that shit was everywhere. And I looked at like the price tags and like saw people like swanning around in fur coats, like buying this stuff as if it was like nothing. And I was like feeling uncomfortable even just being in the store in case I broke something and had to pay for it because it was all glass and like. And it like ruined my day, and I was furious because like it was when I was still on the dole, and I was just like, this is obscene. This is like, if I went up to one of these people now and said, instead of buying those baubles, which you probably definitely don't need, because you've probably got some really expensive baubles at home that you used last year that you got from here as well, and just gave me, like you said, £2,000, which is what you're spending on this anyway. Even £100, I could buy Christmas presents for people if I had £100, and they might be feeling charitable because they think they're a character in a Charles Dickens novel or something, because everyone in London thinks that at Christmas, and they might give it to me, and then that would be my December, like, sorted. But none of them will do that, and I'm never going to ask for it either, because I fucking hate them all, and I don't want to give them the satisfaction. And
maybe we should try that this Christmas as a little social experiment to see if we can bring the Dickens magic back.
Oh my God, that would be such a good political action. I mean, I'm not sure what it would achieve, but it would definitely be...
You might get a free turkey or something.
Yeah.
The biggest one from the shop, I believe.
Do you want to hear a funny story about turkeys?
Always.
My mum, I think...
Is a turkey.
My mum is a turkey. So, like, I can never remember if this was her or her friend, but I'm pretty sure it was her. She used to work in Woolworths in the days when apparently Woolworths sold food.
I love
like
Woolworths.
Proper food, not just the pick and mix that we all used to nick batteries in the bottom of. And she felt sorry for old people that came in, so she used to just give them food off the deli counter, like cheese or whatever. And one day she gave someone a frozen turkey. This old woman, and the old woman hid it under her blouse and her coat and walked out, and my mum got found out because the old woman fainted because of the cold.
Oh no!
And just collapsed in Woolworths and like had a massive frozen turkey on her, and they found her. So yeah.
I don't know what the moral of that is, I'll be honest.
I don't know what the moral of that is. I mean, if you're going to give an old woman a turkey, don't give her a frozen one. Maybe.
Why did she have to hide it though? If she was given it, she could just walk out.
Because my mum was essentially just being like, I won't tell them if you steal this. So, like, my mum wasn't paying for it out of her wages or anything. She was just like, I will just have it. It's like me when I used to work in an ice cream shop. I used to give OAPs free flakes because they were always like incensed at the price of a 99 ice cream. So I'd be like, it's fine, you just have it.
Aww.
Ice cream shops are actually quite depressing places to work because you're giving something that makes people really happy to them, basically, and it's quite cool and it's a fun job, and you usually get free ice cream. But they're also like, all the ones I worked in when I was a teenager are like, this is the size of the scoop! Like, no more! Not a minuscule more, not a single chocolate chip more. This is the size of the scoop. Practice! Like, show me what the size of the scoop is. Alright, for God's sake, Andy, like, I'll give them like a scoop of like, no more! You can't give them like, no. Even if it's the bottom of the tub and it makes more sense to give them one bigger scoop than a tiny one and leave some in there to melt. No more! Even then!
I know everywhere's got profit margins and stuff, but it's not like ice cream's an expensive commodity.
Oh no, it's fucking cheap if you buy it in bulk. It was like, whippy ice cream as well. Like, I can never eat whippy ice cream because it stinks when it's raw. When it's not frozen and whipped up, it like smells like chemical crossed with like milk that you've left out.
Yum yum.
And like, yeah, it's just when you pour it in, it looks like, you know, that banana medicine you get when you're a kid.
I love that.
I love it, but
let's go get some.
Like a lot of, let's go and abuse prescription medication. That's antibiotics, Tom. People like you are the reason we've all got resistance to antibiotics.
Well, they shouldn't make it taste so nice.
Make them so damn tasty, should they? There we go. We solved that problem. Yeah, it looks like that, and in vast quantities, turns out it's not that appealing.
Oh, you've just single-handedly destroyed the 99 market in the UK.
I mean, I don't think I have. I wish I had that power. because all the people that I worked for, that were ice cream vendors, were horrible.
Oh.
I'd love to destroy their market and get ice cream nationalised. We could all just have ice cream whenever we wanted it, and those bastards wouldn't be able to dictate scoop sizes anymore.
I mean, how much nicer would like the job centre be if every time you went they gave you a free ice cream?
It'd be brilliant. Like,
it's amazing when you're poor. Little things like that make your day so much.
Yeah.
Like there was one time I went to like Burger King in somewhere in London. I don't want to say because the person might still work there. I don't know. But I was like, what can I get for like £1 and 13p? And then he put through a meal that was supposed to be like £1.79 and gave it to me for £1.13, and it made my day. I was so happy. I was like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I think when you've not got money, like tiny things like that and the free flake and stuff, things like that, it is a good customer service. Like the big capitalist man's like, no, don't do it or lose money. But it's like, yeah, but that's the thing people remember.
Yeah, I mean, I should stop painting myself as like a Robin Hood figure, because a lot of the people I was giving free flakes to were like very rich holiday makers in the Lake District, and they could probably have paid their own fucking 99, and I lost my job over it. So
some of these heartwarming stories.
Yeah, I mean, there were some of them. I mean, they were all old people. You should be nice to old people. A lot of people are mean to old people.
Well, it depends on the old person, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think of them very patronising.
Not that I'm saying you should go out and attack old people.
It's just like generic lump of people, from everyone who like fought in the war against fascism to like people who like Bob Dylan. And I tend to get on with people who like Bob Dylan, so I get on with a lot of old people. But like a lot of people my age, I hate them because they voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
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 And I just think of them as like everyone's nan and granddad.
I mean, yeah, but your nan and granddad could have voted for UKIP or the Tories.
Well, my gran voted for Thatcher because she was a woman. Yeah, I mean, I do love my gran, but bad choice there, really.
One last thing we've not really covered is who would you say are your heroes who have inspired you to want to be creative and be an activist? Who are the people who you go, yes, they're the people who make me go, I want to be like them?
That's a really good question. I have no immediate idea. There was a woman called Eleanor Marx who was Karl Marx's youngest daughter and who translated Das Kapital into Capital. So she's basically the reason that we all know who Karl Marx is. And also she was like an amazing activist and political campaigner in her own right. And
I had heard of Karl Marx and not her, so that's the patriarchy for you, probably.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he did invent Marxism.
Yeah, it's just weird. I've never heard of her at all. That sort of
like she was she campaigned for the vote to women and for working class men. She was like an internationalist and wanted to build socialism across Europe and the world, and was really creative and fierce and wonderful. And her biography by a woman called Rachel Holmes is really, really worth reading. Like, I didn't realise that the Marx family like were quite poor, and only really got to do what they did because Engels basically bankrolled them. And so there's a lot about that in there. She's really inspiring. As a writer, Terry Pratchett. I don't really know what Terry Pratchett's politics were, but I suspect that they were fairly to the left. And his books, I don't think many people can like read his books and not have their minds changed about a few things. And like, you know, he basically he just writes so well in such a sort of like funny and brilliant and irreverent way about really serious stuff, and it hits home much better, I think, when you do it like that. Like, I'm not really a fan of like George Orwell or like people who like ram it down your throat. I think there's a place for it, but I think most people respond better to if you make them laugh a bit. And I don't know, I mean, there are so many like amazing people that I meet who don't realise how amazing they are. Like, there's a group who've just basically almost single-handedly halted and possibly stopped Tory NHS cuts in Southend. they're all like, you know, I like know a few of them a bit, and they're amazing. And then there's like everyone who's like fighting against fracking, and like people who just go and like chip away at all this shit and don't really know if it will have any effect even in their lifetimes, but do it anyway. I think that's such an incredible thing to do, and yeah, they inspire me as well.
I think there's probably a lot of people who would put you in the same bracket though, in terms of not knowing how amazing the work you do is and how much it impacts on people and helps them and stuff.
That's very nice of you to say. I don't know if there are, but
I'm quite sure there is. I'd bet my cup of tea on it.
Okay.
And I love my tea.
I mean, we should mention now that Tom's cup of tea is empty.
Well, don't make it look like an empty promise. I would bet a hypothetical full cup of tea on it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a I hate taking praise, but thank you. But I think everyone is like on the left, which I can't not say as the left. Like anyone who's trying to make change and is like part of that big movement, we should all try and like inspire and build up hope in each other, because it's really shit like a lot of the time. And if you don't try and do it a bit, it very quickly just becomes a lot of people shouting in a room.
Basically what the House of Parliament is.
Yeah, well, we don't want to emulate that.
No, we don't. We want to be better than that.
Yeah, so thank you. I hope that's true, and
it is true.
I will endeavour to keep doing that.
Becky/Rebecca Winson.
You didn't alternate the name.
I did it. I did it in.
just record it all now, like.
Yeah, just Becky.
Rebecca.
Becky. Rebecca. I'll just edit those in. And it'll
Yeah. It will confuse people even more, because like some people call me Rebecca all the time, and some people call me Becky all the time, and people think that I have an opinion about like which I prefer, and like I'd probably say Becky because that's what I call myself. But
what about Becca?
No, I know some really brilliant people with that name, but I personally, if someone calls me Becca, I feel physically sick. I don't know why. It just always wound me up.
Oh.
Like, I don't feel like a Becca. I think it was a bit strong, wasn't it? Maybe I do care what I've... Bex. Very few people can get away with Bex.
Becco.
Joe sometimes calls me that. I don't really have... I mean, like... heinous bitch, massive cow, annoying gobshite, feminazi. There's lots of other ones, but they're not a riff off Rebecca. But I'd like Rebecca is what I'll put on my CV, or like on the programme of the World Transformed. But I don't really know why, because everyone just calls me Becky.
It's because you're an enigma.
I don't think I am. Like, we just spent 2 hours talking about my innermost secrets. If I was an enigma before, I'm not anymore.
Well, massive cow, thank you very much.
Thank you. That was good. Good to chat.
Thanks for listening to that episode of the podcast with Becky Winson. She's amazing. So amazing, in fact, that I'm not going to end this podcast in the usual way. We're actually going to end it with the clip that they mentioned, well, the clip that we mentioned from The World Transformed. So please enjoy that, and we'll see you next Monday.
My background is in the trade union movement. I was a workplace organiser there, been a housing and feminist campaigner. I currently work for the New Economics Foundation as an organiser, and I'm a writer as well, although I don't do as much of that as I'd like anymore. But I'm here today to speak less about my work and more about something I don't often speak about publicly, which is mental health, my experiences of it as a working class woman. I feel really lucky and humbled to be on this panel. I don't consider myself by any means an expert on anything we're talking about, or even one of the worst victims of the mental health crisis, or even of capitalism. But But in my work, I spend a lot of time with those people who are, and more importantly, my friends and my family are undoubtedly victims. So I hope I do them justice today by speaking, and I also hope I manage to get my words out without losing my voice, because I've got a horrific cold at the moment, so sorry if that happens. I was asked specifically to give my thoughts on how class intersects with mental health, and I didn't really know where to start with that, apart from to say this. If you're working class, under this government especially, if you don't currently have a mental health condition, you're only one pay cut, one benefits cut, one benefits investigation, one eviction away from having a mental health condition, and you know it. The ideology that's oppressed my class since before I was born is one which doesn't just deliberately put us into this situation, it relies on us being in this situation. Every extra suicide that's happened as a result of austerity in this country isn't suicide. Those in charge are fully aware of what those policies do. They are murders. Now, I've been told by my therapist that perhaps this black and white view isn't that useful to my recovery from depression. And I can see that point. But I can't get past the point, the fact that under capitalism, it feels totally logical for me and the people I know to be depressed. In fact, it feels like capitalism wants us to be depressed and it wants us to be anxious. So you take the way our housing market functions under capitalism. So after I left the council estate where I grew up, I moved 8 times in 5 years. So each time was either due to a rent increase or eviction. The place I live in now, I can't get a long-term tenancy on, not for want of trying. So although I know I'm going to get married next year, I don't know if there'll be a threshold for me to carry my husband over. Although I know I want kids, I know I will essentially have to ask my landlord's permission to have them. Thousands of people are paying extortionate rent. Thousands more can't get on council waiting lists. Thousands of others are on the street. No one in a private rental can say that they really know their landlord won't jack up the rent, kick them out, or fail to make basic repairs. And increasingly, social renters, like my parents, who used to, a few years ago, be on a fairly secure housing position, they're in the same boat as well. There isn't one single anti-anxiety medication or cognitive behavioural therapy that I can think of which is going to put minds at rest about any of that. So who wouldn't have panic attacks? And if you look at the workplace and how the attitude we're all forced into taking to it is essentially a list of depressive symptoms. No hope that things will get better, no pleasure or interest in doing daily tasks, no reward from them, no real connection to the human beings around you, no appetite to try and make things better, because what you're up against is so overwhelming it's almost impossible to manage anything else. Millions of people are caught in gig economy or 0 hours work, making millions of pounds for a few other people, earning a pittance themselves and being largely unable to do a damn thing about it. It is so difficult to get a phone call off my little brother and try and explain to him why he should have to get out of bed in the mornings and why he should try to do that, when the job he's getting out of bed for works him until he's aching from his feet to his head and then pays him less per hour than it charges its customers for a meal. If society says you're not worth enough money to live on, who wouldn't feel worthless? So when we've got an epidemic of insecure housing and an epidemic of exploitative jobs, it's not that much of a surprise to me that we've got an epidemic of mental health conditions. I've lost my place now, sorry. But our situation is so bad, not just because of the causes of mental health problems, but because of the way they're dealt with, which is to say they're not really dealt with, not for most people. I'm not an expert on the NHS, but I know this. I'm only currently getting therapy because a bunch of my friends got together and put money in an envelope and that enabled me to pay for private sessions. Those private sessions, that therapy is not available on the NHS in my area. It does not exist. If you've got depression and you live in Basingstoke, there is no such thing as free at the point of care for healthcare unless you're on medication, unless you just want to be on medication. There's a woman who lives close by to me who's in a far worse situation than me. Her kids were taken away from her because she's got severe mental health, she's got severe depression. She couldn't cope with looking after her kids. The NHS and social services couldn't help her cope. She got her kids taken away from her. She recently tried to kill herself because of that. She got put in hospital. There were no beds available to put her into a secure unit or anything like that. She was discharged to the same amount of care that she was getting before all of that happened. Cut after cut has put thousands of people in situations like this. But I do want to add, although I know that you asked us to end on a bit of an uplifting tone, my little brother was in a similar situation to that. He also tried to kill himself, and that was under a Labour government. And he ended up in a police cell rather than a secure unit because there was no beds for him. And that was back in 2009. So we can't talk about this as if the only answer is regime change, because it isn't. And I am in full hope that a Corbyn government will deliver a much better mental health service than we've ever had before in this country. But we do need to be mindful that it is not a given that Labour governments always deliver on this. And also, to end on a bit of a hopeful tone, my therapist keeps telling me I have to look for hope. And she gets a lot of rants directed at her. Luckily, I've got that. So I was lucky that when I first got depression at 18, there was a well-funded NHS to help. But what really fixed me was finding the trade union movement. So finding a part of society that really valued me, that valued others, that helped people, that was a communal space where working class people of all genders, races, nationalities, sexualities, abilities, give each other dignity and respect that most of society doesn't afford us. That was brilliant for me. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. One of the first genuine smiles in my early 20s was when my branch secretary showed me our branch's really beautiful, intricately hand-embroidered union banner and told me it was as much mine as it was the people who's created it 50 years ago. That's a bit geeky, isn't it? But I really believe that alongside a shed load of NHS funding and change to work and housing policies and more, that spaces that give people pride and hope and solidarity and genuine control over the way they live their lives are the way to start fixing the mess they're in. And it does feel like we're part of a movement that's on the cusp of getting that if we all just push a bit harder.